Today, we are recording our third episode for my podcast, How Female Athletics Impacted by Youth Sports. We are joined by the wonderful Eva Phalen, the Recreation Supervisor for the Piedmont Recreation Department. Hi, Eva. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We can start with digging into your own background in female sports. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what sports you did as a child.
Sure. I'm a Bay Area native. So I grew up in Berkeley, California. I actually went to Albany schools and then went to Berkeley High. And then I went off to college at Davis. So stayed pretty close around
In the
here.
Bay. I like that.
Yeah. And so wonderful to be back. I moved up to Oregon for a stint, but always felt the pull to come back to the Bay Area. But growing up, I feel like I played every sport. I tried every sport there was. I loved PE. That was my favorite class of the day. But mostly as far as competitively, I grew up playing softball, soccer, tennis, and then volleyball is the one that I really stuck with all through high school, and then went on to play just club volleyball in high school, and then moving back to the Bay Area as an adult, I then came back and was able to play volleyball and met a lot of people that way too, and then eventually my shoulder fell apart and knees were not working so well, and so
Oh gosh, yeah, that's what happens.
Don't get old.
So you were no longer playing volleyball, or sometimes here and there?
I still have a volleyball net and I feel like I could. But I love, at this point, I play with my little kids and that's about as much as my shoulder can.
I was going to ask, because I know you have a few kids, right?
I have two little kids. Yeah, they're 7 and 9, a boy and a girl. I forgot now, I'm over, make me feel old, but really it's for any age. I play pickleball.
Oh,
this afternoon.
That's really in this, like right now. Everyone's
it's so fun. It's a way of, I feel like old people like me who things are like joints are falling apart, that like still play and be competitive.
To keep active, yeah. Even young people play. All my friends play pickleball, so cool.
I actually like it because I go out there and people call me like a young whippersnapper. I'm like, oh wow.
Whippersnapper, wow. What a catchphrase.
Yes.
So does your daughter play volleyball now, or does she into some other?
So my daughter is super athletic and I love that she plays sports. And at this point, she kind of tries everything. She's super into soccer, super into basketball. And then I just try to introduce her to every other sport. So we've gone out as a family, played pickleball, tennis, volleyball is a little bit tricky, but I still sign her up for classes and we play in the backyard. And so she's kind of dabbling in everything, which I love, because I think from the dabbling aspect, she can really choose what sports she likes.
Yeah, the one thing I probably regret most is that I really stuck to basketball mostly as a kid, and I wish I branched out a little bit before I got older. But
they say that this age it's really good to just kind of expose them, and then they can choose, and then you pick a sport eventually, one or two, and hopefully you can kind of continue.
Right. So do you what impact do you think playing those youth sports had to your athletic career now, would you say? Because now you're still playing those. And
positive from the get-go, right? That's what comes to mind. I think first is that I like to say it kept me out of trouble. I wasn't a horrible kid, but at the same time, I feel like playing a sport, one, had to be accountable. You had to do your homework. You had to go to bed early if you can. You had to get good grades if you wanted to stay on the team. And I definitely, talking about high school, I definitely had friends who were experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and that just never even crossed my mind because I had to get up for a workout at 6 a.m. or whatever it was. So, and then just I always played team sports. It's funny, as I got older, I met a lot of friends who didn't. There were two avenues, right? You could be a team sport or a solo sport. Lots of people who did rock climbing or running. That was very cerebral and in your head. I was all about social and doing the team sports. And I think everything it taught me got me to where I am today, right? So you're playing on a team, so you have, you're playing, you learn how to cooperate, how to win, how to lose, sportsmanship,
Exactly.
how to be
Yeah.
a good winner. I always tell my kids it's a really good lesson to learn.
How to win and how to lose.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, how to be accountable, how to be on time, how to push yourself, how to push your coworkers or teammates at the time, right? I think it's a huge impact, and I see it in my kids too, right? Like I see them take what they've learned on a team and then like get in a little argument or something with a friend, a little tiff, and how to figure that out, or even with each other. That rarely
Yes.
happens, but
Rarely.
so much. And I would say, especially for girls, I think these are all lessons that one needs to learn, but for boys and girls too.
Exactly. It shouldn't be, just for one or the other. And I think team sports was how I went to. And I think those skills that you listed is exactly what I think I took with me, just being able to learn how to work with others, push yourself while working with others. So yeah, let's get into your role, where your career is now and what exactly you do with that. So you are the recreation supervisor for the Piedmont Recreation Department. So could you describe for us exactly what that is?
Sure. Yeah, I got into recreation a little bit later in life, but I feel like I finally figured out what I'm going to do when I grow up. I am recreation through and through. And I worked in a few different cities. I worked for the city of Albany and the city of Orinda, and landed here in Piedmont about a year and a half ago, a little bit more. And as a recreation supervisor, I get to do a whole breadth of different things. So obviously my passion is sports and girls in sports, specifically as the underrepresented gender, of really promoting girls playing sports and keeping them playing sports. But then I get to wear a lot of different hats. So I also do all of our senior programming and really trying to enhance the programs we have available for older adults. I created what we call sidekicks. And so that's programming for kids with special needs, and developing that program as well, so that it's a year-long program for elementary age kids. We obviously do a ton of events here at Piedmont. And then also the other big hat that I wear is all of our classes and camps. So I would say, I don't know, 90% of what Piedmont Recreation does is all for the kids. So it's camps, it's classes during the year. We have 300 to 400 camps and classes going on at any given time. So fun. I sell fun, basically.
That's awesome. What a great way to do that. Great job. And you got into this, how'd you get into it? What was your degree in?
That's a funny question, because I love my path and I'm proud of it, because my major, I went to UC Davis, and my major was animal science. I was going to be a vet. Fast forward, it's funny because I was a bartender in there, and people were like, well, that makes sense. Like working with
the fun aspect really comes in.
Yes. So exactly. And so that's what I was going to get at, is that professionally I started, I did a little vet, but I also started, I worked for a software company, I worked for a winery, and always doing marketing, fundraising, events. Did that professionally, and recreationally, I always had this aspect of sports and fun and planning and coaching. And so I don't know, maybe I turned 30. That was probably the crux of being like, all right, figure it out, Eva, what are you going to do? And I realized that there was this perfect kind of dovetail of my professional and recreational life that looks like this.
Right.
So that's what I say when I found out what I want to be when I grow up, is that I do all of those things, right? I get to, when our coach isn't able to come to the volleyball practice, I get to coach volleyball. If I'm making programs that are fun and educational for kids and adults. And I do a lot of how are we going to pay for it, and how are we going to get the word out? So it's really like a really nice,
a lot of hats.
a lot of hats. It's
that sounds so cool. It's always so much pressure to figure it out, and your path sounds very awesome.
Right. So you too could be a vet, pre-vet major and end up where I am.
Sometimes I wonder, yeah, I'm health science, so I'm on that track too, but I'm very into sports and all that you just said, so maybe I'll end up there.
Yep, yep. I mean, and I always knew I wanted to get into recreation and I didn't know what that looked like.
Right.
This is my advice, I don't know, to anyone who's listening, is I just took everyone and their mom and their neighbor out to coffee. The way I learned about the position I actually got in the city of Albany was my husband's coworker's neighbor used to work in Albany. So talk about networking, just take it out to
Exactly.
coffee.
Network with everyone you can. I love
Yep.
that. The main reason that we chose to speak with Eva today was about one of the events that we were kind of talking about before, or an additional event that we hadn't talked about yet, which is Play Like a Girl Plus, put on by the Recreation Department of Piedmont, and I think previously Albany, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk about Play Like a Girl Plus. What exactly is it, and when and how did it get started?
So this is a fun story in the sense that as passionate as I am, and actually my boss, who's Shelley Putzer, the director, we worked together for the city of Albany way back when, and we actually got to go to a little seminar on this thing called AB 2404. It just rolls off your tongue.
Yeah, that's super
Um,
smooth.
Right. But it's the Title IX equivalent to Parks and Recreation, essentially, gender equity in
Okay.
sports. And so we went to this seminar put on by the wonderful Kim Turner, and we discovered that we had a lot of work to do. Again, both of us had been coaches, both of us had been athletes all of our lives. And we looked at each other with these big eyes thinking, we got to really look at our numbers and see, because it came down to who's using your field, what's going on in your youth sports. And so when we really looked at our numbers, we were right. We had some work to do, and a lot of different things came about. And one of them was this idea of Play Like a Girl, and that the idea of getting girls in front of organizations and partnering with the school district, who always is struggling for their Title IX numbers as well. We saw ourselves as the recreation department as the feeder program. So if we can get girls interested at an early age and keep them playing sports, that's obviously going to benefit them and the high school as well. So the Play Like a Girl Plus event came about. And the first year we started was 2018, again for the city of Albany. And we were going to be happy if 50 to 100 girls showed up, but we had about 400 girls show up that first year, and
That's awesome.
it was amazing. It was
400.
the girl power vibe was just palpable.
Oh, I love it. Girl power.
Girl power. So we had, again, 20 different sports. Girls ages 2 to 18 could come try out the sports, and we just had the best time. I mean, the parents came up to us and were like, their minds were blown. Like, I never would have known my daughter was into fencing, and now we just signed up for a fencing camp. I never would have known my daughter was into boxing, but we just signed up for a class, right? She's 7 years old, and this was just like to see her punch in these bright pink gloves, and
That's
just
so powerful.
so powerful, so impactful. And so we all walked away just glowing from that. The school district obviously was super pleased. All of the organizations were super excited to get in front of this often hard to reach demographic, right? 400 girls ages 2 to 18. And so everyone had a great time, and we realized that like this was needed out there. And so my mind, the day after went to how can we make this bigger and better. So 2019, we did, we duplicated it. We had about 20 different sports, some different, some the same. We did demonstrations on stage. So the Albany High School girls wrestling team, who was, I think, had just won state or nationals, and they were out there like wrestling on their mats, and I get up and like giggle and tuck their hair behind their ears.
Oh my God.
They were like, but they were fierce, right? And to watch the girls watching them and what that did, someone who looked like you to just be so powerful, made an impact. It made an impact for sure.
And it's not often that young girls see female wrestlers on TV like they would see like male wrestlers or fencers or any of that. I think that's so awesome.
Right. Those are my favorite to get there, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about, yeah, like you said, wrestling, fencing, skateboarding, you don't think of a
Right.
female necessarily.
Mhm.
So to see those are even more impactful than our mainstream soccer, basketball, sports that you might see co-ed, right? Girls or
And
boys.
that parents will more likely and usually enroll their female in compared to the ones that are predominantly male.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we planned for 2020. That never happened. It was gonna be in May 2020. Didn't get there, but and then during the pandemic, I switched over here to Piedmont. And my boss, Shelly Petzer, had already moved over here as the director, and I had the opportunity to apply for a supervisor position. And she was like, "And you got to bring play like a girl." So I said, "Absolutely." I brought it with me. And last year was our first year doing that, doing it here, and it was a similar type of event. And we had, again, 400 seems to be our magical number. We had about 400 girls come. We had 20 different sports. Last year, we actually incorporated professional and Olympic athletes. So we
Wow.
had an Olympic swimmer, we had an Olympic pole vaulter, a professional female baseball player, and a professional boxer come to the event. And we had them not only showcase their events within the confine of the event itself, but they also did a little Q&A on stage, which personally was my favorite part of the event. They talked about the struggles of competing with the boys, all the days they wanted to just quit, but had to like get back up on that horse and keep going. They were just totally impactful and motivational, and again, watching girls, listening to them.
Yeah, but to have a role model put in front of them on stage.
Absolutely, right? Someone who looks like you.
Right.
And the girls got to ask questions, and they were just adorable, and the athletes had wonderful answers. And so it was great. So that was 2022. And then fast forward, we have our 2023 event coming up here on April 23rd. So
Yes, and we talked about it. So my class for women in sport, led by Claire Williams, will be there to volunteer. And we are all so excited. We talk about it at least once a week in class.
awesome.
Yeah,
I can't
it's gonna
wait.
be
Well, we
fun.
can't do it without you guys. So thank you.
Yeah,
It's
gonna be nice to see with my own eyes. I'm very excited. So
yeah. No, it's going to be wonderful. Yeah. So we can't wait. And we're hoping for at least 400. I always like to aim for 500 girls from around the Bay Area, but we do. I mean, we have 300 girls signed up already. The event is totally free. And just kind of perusing where kids are from. We have athletes from Alameda, Pittsburgh, a couple from Sacramento are coming down,
wow,
Tracy. So
all over really.
all
That's a large range for sure.
yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So we were talking a little bit about how a lot of youth boys are usually put into sports more often than youth females and into more like predominantly male sports such as fencing, wrestling, any of that. So throughout your career, either in this role, this job, or a previous one, have you ever witnessed a large difference between boys and girls activity levels or sports? And could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting in my career, and then also as a parent, right?
Right.
I have different sets of eyeballs that I look at, when I go drop my kids off at soccer, I'm always kind of sizing it up too.
Yeah.
But you touched on it too, is that like, yeah, you sign your kid up for soccer, you sign your kid up for maybe baseball or basketball, right? Those are kind of the mainstream sports. And it's fun, and sometimes you play co-ed starting off, and then maybe as you get older, you'll divide into a girls team versus a boys team, or all girls, all boys. And then what happens is statistically, kind of in their teenage years, 10 to 13, girls really start to drop off and not play as many sports. And why is that? I think there's probably a few different reasons. It's been studied, is that the reason girls play sports versus boys play sports are quite different. And so one thing we do at Piedmont Recreation too is that on our girls, let's say basketball teams, we offer we might say you get two or three friend requests versus boys only get one. Girls statistically want to play sports because they want to be with their friend. They love the social aspect of it. And so we're happy to help that, right? To help girls play with their friends. If you're going to separate them, the odds of them wanting to play on that team might be slightly less. I also think the reason you play a sport as a kid is because it's fun, right?
Right.
And
it's
then
going to be all about pressure and performance.
and then as you get older, it's pressure and performance. And
Right.
all of a sudden, I always like to throw in there, you have a uniform, right? And for girls, if you look at your uniform, I remember in high school, my volleyball shorts got real short that I wasn't super comfortable with. I remember always pulling them down. And I remember the varsity actually had these little butt huggers, right? They were underwear. They're wearing underwear.
Right.
So if that alone isn't enough to be like, sure, I'm going to be into volleyball anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I think those are, just we at Piedmont Recreation, I think one of our goals, one of our many goals is to keep girls playing sports. I think with Play Like a Girl, our hope is really to get, obviously, we've expanded the age range to 2 to 18, but middle and high school girls, getting them to come out, play in a fun and supportive environment. You might not be into always winning. And so how do you keep playing sports if you aren't competitive, if you don't always need to win? That gets harder and harder as you get older and more competitive, move up the ladder in your sports.
Yeah, that's something that's super interesting. We haven't talked about that as much. And us is just like, the competitive aspect of it, because we hear about a lot of female athletes, young female athletes dropping out because of reasons like you were saying, like the shorts, or your friends no longer play, or you kind of got shunned off a little bit because of the boys, and they were saying, oh, well, you don't really belong on our team. But the competitive one is a good one to see too, because if there isn't the aspect of social, like how else are you going to keep playing?
Sure. And also, like, what does it do to your self-esteem if you don't make the team?
Right.
And what's the difference between boys and girls of how we teach our kids to cope with that?
And react. Yeah.
Exactly. Resiliency, and okay, get back up on that horse, right? And like try out again, or practice harder, get up earlier.
And then it goes into like high school when it's like freshman, JV, varsity, and then there's a whole nother rank that you have to keep moving up. And it's like sometimes that takes away, I would say, from just playing.
Yeah.
Which is why youth sports it's definitely before high school and everything. It's nice to see a little more inclusion sometimes.
Yeah, well, let's say high school has a field hockey team. Well, if there's nothing at the middle school, are you at age 13 or 14 going to be able to step in and start playing, right? Not everyone will be able to do that. And that's typically a girls' sport. So again, Piedmont Recreation, we see ourselves as the feeder program. So we're trying to offer more field hockey so that when you get to 9th grade, you have that confidence and you know that you've already played the sport before you actually even decide to go try out.
Yeah, exactly. And then do you at Piedmont, do you offer that field hockey for the girls usually?
I don't believe that. I'm thinking outside the box here, but so our field hockey program is for boys and girls, but I would say the majority is girls. But we definitely have some boys in that program. It's just right now it's just a class, so anyone can sign up for it. It's not necessarily like a league where they compete. So it's, again, very in recreation we can do that. So it's very fun, supportive, and less competitive.
And that's nice to be able to show them what they're doing instead of having to do the weekly practice or whatever.
Right. Developmental, we say. Developing the skills.
Yes. Awesome. So if you would change something that occurs towards female sports and youth, what would it be exactly? And we could reword this such as, what are some of the most persistent barriers you see to getting girls active in youth sports?
Yeah, all sorts of things. If I had my crystal ball, we've touched on a lot of them. We just talked about like uniforms. I think as kids get older, I think that's more and more that and we didn't even mention religion, right? And how you've grown up, of if that's even allowed.
Yeah, you're
um,
used to. Yeah, or yeah, loud.
allowed and what's, if there could be more flexibility. I've also touched on like someone who looks like you, right? So getting more female coaches. I often, at Piedmont Rec, we often try to get moms. We have a huge rec basketball league with 500 kids, girls and boys. And we really try to get our moms to coach both boys and girls, but especially our girls teams. And again, here's wearing my mom hat, is it's hard. Like, I kind of tend to let my husband be the coach because he has a little bit of extra time, and he's not managing the schedules. I don't need to go into that too much, but
Yeah. No, but it's true, definitely. Yeah, the roles and it's so hard to get that, and men tend to even like, volunteer themselves for that first anyways.
Again, it's just kind of natural, right? But I've really recently pushed. My daughter will be in a rec basketball, and I'm like, no, I'm going to do this. Not only to like model, like, hey, this is important because you're important to me, and I want to be there for all of the girls. But just to show that, like, yeah, moms can do it too, and moms are great at coaching. And I can look up YouTube. I might not be a great
Yeah, you know
basketball.
what you're doing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it should be more about fun anyways, like you were saying. So it doesn't need to be competitive all the time.
Totally, totally. And then, I think a lot of it is, gosh, again, if I had my magic wand, I guess, it would be also within recreation. I really see that there is an avenue for us to promote exactly what we're saying: fun, encouraging, supportive, developmental sports, and really having that language and talking about it with our community, not just our girls, but we need those dads and, to be our allies as well, but to understand why it's so important. Yeah. And every year I've done the Play Like a Girl, people love the event. And then some people will say, okay, when are you going to do something for my son, Play Like a Boy? Or when are you going to do something for it? And I don't quite have the elevator speech response to that yet. But as the underrepresented gender, we're going to keep promoting girls playing sports. We
Yes.
know how beneficial it is. We know that girls, at the collegiate level, girls who receive sports scholarships, they graduate at higher rates than female students generally. And overall, young girls who play sports have higher grades. They score higher on standardized tests than non-athletes. There's health benefits, right? There's again, statistically, lower rates of depression. Girls who play sports have higher self-esteem. They're 20% less 20% less likely to get breast cancer. And then we talked about all of the amazing skills that they can learn too, that help them go on to become powerful CEOs of some big company, right? Of leadership skills and discipline and working as a team, all of those directly transposed to working in tech or whatever they decide to do.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's so important to just, and parents who ask, what do you do it for my boy? And it's like, well, they probably are already developing a lot of these skills without that event. So the girls are missing out just a bit more.
It's so true. And it's, again, I have to really look at the way I talk to my son and my daughter, and I catch myself. I'm not perfect. I will encourage, my son to, play a sport, or we'll go out and we'll play catch because my daughter's drawing or something. And then I have to stop and be like, no, you guys, let's both go. Let's all go play catch. Let's all go do this. And it's just, we talk to our kids differently depending
Yeah.
on gender. It's just natural.
And their behavior too, because girls, they're not just influenced by you, but also, their peers at school or whatever. And, they see the girls drawing more, or, they'll start doing that too. So it
So
comes
true.
from everywhere.
It's so true. I mean, actually a friend of mine who I'm running the event, the Play Like a Girl event. So I try to make sure that I have time to go around with my daughter. But last year my friend brought her, and she told me, it always brings tears to my eyes, but she was like, she is so proud of you today. Like, just
Oh,
watching you do this event. She's been telling everyone, my mom puts on this event. My mom runs Play Like a
That gave
Girl.
me goosebumps. That's
I
so
know, right?
sweet.
So it's like, we got to model it. We got to model it for our
Exactly. Yeah.
daughters.
And that's where it starts. I really think, if I could choose one thing, I would do for my kids is just being the role model and showing, my daughter and my son that they can both do it. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's so fun that she's into it. She's understanding. So
She woke up on March 27th and told me there's a month left until Play Like a Girl. I was like, that's right. I got a
count
lot
down
to
the
do.
days.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then just, one last thing and we'll get wrapped up. So do you think that a lot of these barriers have changed over time, or throughout your career, or have they not? Have a lot of them stayed the same? Like for the uniforms example, do you think they've been more inclusive of religion or comfortability, or you think it's been about the same?
Gosh, this last year has been 50 years since Title IX, right? So
Right. That's
we,
awesome.
dived into where were we 50 years ago? And I don't know about your mom, if she talks about like, did your mom play sports in high school?
She did cheerleading mostly.
That counts. That's a CIF sport now. That counts. Well, again, my mom talks about just literally, she had no opportunities. You were
Right.
not allowed. That was not that long ago that she was not allowed to play sports. She picked up tennis because she could do that after school with her girlfriends, or she was sporty. She wanted to be sporty, but she didn't have that opportunity. And so looking at our 50 years, wow, we've come so far. But also hearing about the Title IX lawsuits that are coming up in high schools and colleges of like, wow, we have so much farther to go.
Right.
And I think one of the most important things that we can do is just talk about these things and educate the community. In town in Piedmont, once a lot of the moms started going into the schools and really educating the high school about Title IX. And they said like only 20% of the kids had ever heard of Title IX. And that was shocking to me.
Yeah.
But we can do it, right? Of like starting this movement of really starting to talk about these inequities, right? If you look at, there was a high school recently, I saw 2 pictures. This was at a presentation of the baseball and the softball field, right? A boys sport predominantly and a girls sport predominantly. And you didn't have to be a Title IX attorney to look at the differences, but the baseball field had a locker room. They had beautiful grass. They, it was just maintained, just pristine. And the softball field had like, you could almost see gophers in the pictures, right? They had all these holes, these divots, no dugouts, no, and all of the amenities that the baseball field. So yes, we've gone so far, and yet we have to keep fighting the good fight. And I think it's important for moms and dads and students,
Coaches and teachers. Yeah.
all of us, right? Recreation departments and high schools and colleges to really prioritize getting these girls into sports. And at Piedmont Recreation, we do these micro changes, right? These where we can put girls playing sports on our flyers. It's not rocket science. We just have to show girls playing basketball, playing baseball. And if
then they'll believe that they can do that too.
Someone who looks like you, exactly, right? The other thing I love to say is watch women's sports. So I have a friend of mine who is a Title IX attorney, so there's that. But in her house, she's very serious about it, where they do 50-50. If we just watched a 49er game, we look up a girls lacrosse, college lacrosse game, or a WNBA game, or whatever it is. So they do 50-50. And I think as us watching sports in person, so we all live locally. So going to a St. Mary's softball game, or a Cal soccer game, or gymnastics or volleyball, whatever it is, filling those stands, or watching it on TV, it not only teaches our kids, but it also it helps. It shows that
people are interested.
Yeah, people are interested, and they're, I think even more, they'll get more funding, right? If you look at college basketball, men's basketball gets a ton more money than the girls basketball. So we can make that change, I think, in our lifetimes. That's my hope, is that we can keep educating and keep a positive change.
Hopefully, if not, at least in your daughter's lifetime.
Yes. True. Yes.
Okay. Well,
yeah. So if anyone listening wants to do a Play Like a Girl event, contact me. We'll figure out how to make it happen. That's my dream.
Yeah, we'll get more than just yours started. That's awesome.
Totally. We're Play Like a Girl Piedmont. You do Play Like a Girl Moraga, or Play Like a Girl Alameda. We'll do many of these.
Yes, I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It was awesome to hear about, your background and the work you're doing to change how it is now.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And
no,
it's fun
absolutely.
to just share this information and get more people involved and educating the public about how important it is, gender equity in sports.
I'm looking forward to seeing you at Play Like a Girl in a few weeks.
Let's do it. It's going to be awesome. Go girls.
Right. And this wraps up my 3-episode podcast series. It was great to be able to get so many perspectives and hear all these experiences from our athletes and supporters. Overall, we want change to be made and for female athletes to have a bigger and better stage in the sports world. It is important to support youth athletes, especially female youth athletes, because many important life skills, good habits, and great opportunities come from playing sports. It is important to have a positive, supportive community rather than one where girls are looked at as not being capable. In the last 3 episodes, the micro changes that were talked about were being a role model yourself to young female athletes. Go out there, volunteer to coach a girls' basketball or soccer team, watch women's sports, go to women's sporting events. All these things are small changes that you can do daily to increase female presence and strength in the sporting world. Thank you, listeners, for your time and attention, and I look forward to seeing these changes come to life. Lastly, I wanted to give a huge thank you to everyone who was able to make this podcast what it was. Professor Claire Williams, all my guests, and the St. Mary's Honors Program.